Welcome to the Sledgecast. This is going to be our first interview on getting to software engineering. I'm Nick, your host. And our guest today is Craig Freeman. He's a technical architect at Kenzon, basically the lead front-end engineer on several projects. He's been working on the front end for several years, lots of React and Angular kind of stuff. So welcome to the show, Craig.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming. We appreciate it a lot. Cool. So what we want to talk about is kind of like how you got into software. So we'll just start out. Like, what was your first paid gig as a software programmer or engineer? And kind of like, how did you end up in that situation?
First paid gig. Let me think about this for a second. I don't know if I got paid for a lot of the early stuff. We're talking like late 90s kind of stuff. First paid gig I probably had was in 2005. I had a paid internship for my college degree. That was at a company called Brand Logic, and it was mostly .NET, C# type stuff, and that's when I first really got into Ajax. That was like a new big wave through the community. So I feel like I was there at the beginning.
Yeah. My first internship was actually .NET too, and that was I guess in 16 or so. But that was Angular days and .NET.
What version of that was that?
I think it was .NET like 3 or 4 maybe. I'm not sure. It was much later than 2005.
Because I remember, and this is pretty typical in a lot of agencies, just the new stuff's out there, but you can't quite upgrade to it. So I remember 2.0 had just come out of ASP.NET, and we were still on 1.1.
Yeah. Yep, that reminds me of a lot of like Java 8 upgrade stuff I had to deal with like last year or two. So what kind of led up to you getting that internship? Was it Brand Logic?
Brand Logic, yeah. Well, I had just gotten into a IT degree, and I went to RIT in Rochester, New York. And they kind of require that you know what you want going in, and I didn't know what I wanted going into college. So I kind of jumped around to a couple different degrees until I finally landed in IT, which seems sort of generic right now. But at the time, it was kind of like the catch-all degree. Like you get a taste of a lot of different stuff. So I had done some web development in high school, and I thought, you know what, let's give it a try. So I honestly can't remember how I found them, but it must have been through some RIT connection, because most, if not all, the people that worked there were also RIT, either students or graduates.
Yeah.
So
they're just recruiting people they knew.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. Yeah.
All
right. So, why did you get started at programming? Like, what were you kind of doing before you got into programming, and why did you decide that programming was what you wanted to get into? And
well, like I said, in high school, I dabbled a little bit in like HTML, and I think I still have the book on my shelf. It's like Essential Webmaster, something like that, something crazy. But I was just kind of interested in making things, and I was actually I was much more interested in design. I used to draw a lot, so I thought, hey, this, web designer could be a pretty interesting gig. And then once I kind of got into that, I stumbled upon HTML and CGI bins and things like that. So that was kind of just an aside. It was kind of just nice. Yeah. It was interesting, So when I went to college, I had to sort of pick my degree carefully, and I ended up at graphic media, which was kind of an interesting mix of design and development. So these were in the days when print on demand was just starting to kind of get some traction, and
and that's still early.
They kept touting that. Right. I don't know if the program ever took off or anything, because I didn't stay very long. Mostly because it made me walk into bookstores and look at book bindings and think, like, that's such a terrible binding, and that wasn't where I wanted my career to go. So that's what made me switch to IT. But originally it started as design, then that kind of led me to development, and then that kind of like activated a puzzle part of my brain that I don't know, it just got me hooked. Yeah. So I kind of ran with that. As far as a paid gig, I took a little bit of a break between my degree and working as a developer. So while I was at college, I got sort of roped into the ambulance squad on campus, and that was fascinating to me. So long story short, I ended up going to more calls than actually class. So I took a break from class, went back home and got my paramedic degree, and realized very quickly that I would be working a lot of hours for a very long time. I think I was working like 3 or 4 part-time jobs and just barely making rent. It just wasn't really. It wasn't enjoyable because of the hours and the money thing. So, however, from like camaraderie and enjoyment perspective, it was great. So I feel like I've always been torn in this. Do I like this? Is it gonna pay my bill? You know?
Yeah. That's a problem everybody probably runs into at some point, but not everybody is like doing EMT stuff and riding ambulances. Their other options aren't as exciting, I guess. So it's
it set the bar pretty high for excitement, I guess. So when I moved to when I finally graduated, all right. So backing up a little, I graduated paramedic school, went back to RIT because I realized I couldn't sustain that kind of schedule. I wrapped up my last year at RIT and got my degree, and then I wanted to go somewhere sunny because if you've never been to upstate New York, it's rather gray. So I thought of the furthest, sunniest place I can think of, and basically packed up the van and headed out to San Diego and crossed my fingers.
Really? Okay. So did you do paramedic stuff?
Yeah. So it was kind of whatever came first, So I had my degree and I was applying for things for that, and I had my paramedic license and I was in the process of transferring that. And this was 2010, so like early 2010, so kind of the tail end of the recession, I guess. Yeah. So I was actually out of work for about 6 months once I got to California, which is not the least expensive place I've lived.
Yeah, San Diego's not cheap. So was that in 2008 then, or 2007? Or was that the 99?
Yeah, so 2010 is when I actually moved out there.
Okay.
And I finally actually landed an ambulance job. But it was not paying well, and the hours weren't great. And I finally just decided to put the EMT thing aside, and despite it being so much fun and fulfilling, I decided I needed to get a real job, I guess. That's not a great way of saying that, but in terms of money, they tend to just throw money at you for software. So I thought, well, you know what? I need to pay my rent. That sounds good. I'll put the CMT thing down for a little bit, and then we'll get back to it later. And Fast forward 8 years, here we are, still doing the software thing.
Yeah.
I did get lucky. I fell into company for doctors in California, and they were looking for a junior developer, and I had some experience over the course of the previous 10 years, I guess. Not a whole lot besides the 2 internships I had done, but they decided to take a chance on me, and they appreciated my medical background, and that's kind of how we got started. It was a WordPress shop, and basically I was cutting before and after pictures and creating themes from scratch for about 2 years.
And just making websites for different doctors.
Right. Updates and, themes from scratch and splash pages and a lot of video things. And that's where I really got pretty decent at jQuery. And I think this was around the time when responsive web design came about. So I think I think I was the one that brought that to the company and made that like a product offering. Before that, they were doing like the mobile site or like a mobile theme.
Oh, so it's very complicated separate. Whereas responsive are kind of
dark time in web history.
The same theme for different device shapes.
Exactly. There was a lot of browser sniffing and things like that. I don't miss those days.
Yeah. So that's kind of how you got into it, I guess. Did you ever have like a moment where you realized that you'd be able to make money in software? You're like, oh, this is gonna work out. Is that this doctor's WordPress job, or was it like in your internships? Like, where did you think, oh, I can make money from writing code for people?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I guess I've been doing some freelance here and there. Like, I think I did a website for an ambulance company before I worked at the doctor marketing firm. I mean, I was out of work for so long. I was just so motivated to stay at a job that I worked my butt off. I worked tons of hours and put in time at the coffee shop every weekend and some evenings, and really just dove in to this world. And I mean, it paid off. In a fairly generous company, I'm really grateful for working there. But they saw my efforts and compensated me appropriately, and I thought, you know what, I can make this work. I guess.
That's good. Cool. So yeah, why are you still programming today? It's been 8 years and you've kept at it the whole time. So like, is it like you really enjoy programming? Is the money, like work effort trade-off good? Like, what keeps you in the programming mindset, I guess?
So I mean, besides that initial need for rent money, I've never really been motivated by a paycheck. And obviously, a paycheck is nice, and I can find things to spend a higher paycheck on, but it's never been really my driver, I guess.
Yeah.
I got into this field because it's like I said, it's taking small chunks and building it up to something, and every time the needs are different. It's similar to the ambulance job, I guess, in the way that every day is different. Every project is different for the software stuff. So there's always different problems to solve. And it keeps me on my toes, I guess. So I guess that was an intriguing element of it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I love about it too, is the solving the problems and kind of like just working with the code. You kind of can zone on it.
And there's obviously like 38 ways of doing anything, and trying
Yeah.
to find the most efficient one has kind of been like my goal, I guess. Trying to find the holy grail of front end combination thing.
That's a pretty big area, I guess. There's definitely a lot going on.
And what's funny is like it's getting bigger by the day. So I don't know how easy that's going to be. But I mean, the best and worst thing I think about software is that there's always more to learn.
Yeah, that's for sure. There's just people are coming up with new frameworks, or there's a new language you want to learn, or just a new area. I've been trying to learn as many things as I can for several years now, and there's still tons of areas I know nothing about.
So what's funny is the IT degree I got, back in, I think, had I stayed on track, it would have been 2006, 2007, something like that. That degree no longer exists. All of the components of that degree, all the little teasers for each different subset of IT are now their own fields.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nuts to me. Like, it's just exploded in the last 15, 20 years. It's very exciting. It's also a little daunting. Just
how much specialization.
Looking at all the things I continuously have to keep up to speed on. It's it can be a little overwhelming, but just got to find what tricks work for you to keep it all in perspective and not get overwhelmed.
Yeah. So what would you say the best part of being a programmer is, in your opinion?
Best part about being a programmer? It's a good question. I mean, a lot of what we've already talked about. It's the puzzle aspect. It's the watching things transform. Like I remember JavaScript back in the day was just kind of this pivoty little scripting language, and I thought it was the coolest thing when I could like change the background color with a button. That was huge. In like 2003, and actually went to the same school as the guy who created jQuery.
Really?
And I kind of followed that pretty closely. There was some connection with my internship managers and that creator, but anyway, they that changed the game, and then Ajax became a huge thing, and applications with Backbone and templating was massive, and it's just been a really interesting ride to watch all the different iterations and what makes room for other things, and I feel like we've gone, like, originally from my perspective, we had a lot of innovation of new languages, new things, new different components to this whole web stack. And then after a while, it was that kind of calmed down. It became more of refactoring and seeing what we could do with existing things and new applications for that. So I don't know. It's been really interesting being in this space. So I'm kind of curious to see where it'll go next. That's what keeps me here.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because the whole websites are only a little over 20 years old, right? And the internet itself is very new, so there's just tons of it, completely new ground, I guess, to enter and figure out what to do.
I know JavaScript just celebrated its 23rd anniversary, so I want to say 93, 94, 95 is really when things started kind of get going. I didn't get my hands on anything until 97, 98 with AOL Personal Publisher and GeoCities and things like that.
Yeah,
that was
it was even later for me.
Ages ago.
When I got started, jQuery and Ruby on Rails were the stuff I was working on. jQuery and PHP. Back in the day. All right. So what is the worst part of being a programmer then? It's kind of 188 question, I guess.
The worst part. I mean, other than there's always more to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you never get to stop.
I don't know. I feel like it. That's a good question. I don't know if I have like a least favorite part. There's a lot of small things that tend to add up, but
what's the bad thing that's at the top of your mind?
All right, top of my mind. I guess one of my least favorite parts is that, and this is more of a side effect of progression, but having to account for all sorts of different browsers is it's difficult.
Yeah.
First it was IE5 and then IE6, and having to do all sorts of different hacks to make things look remotely similar. And it just never seems to end. Like, IE10 is still supported in some places, and all the new stuff isn't necessarily in IE10, so you have to plan accordingly. But I guess that's one of the more frustrating things. It's having to keep an eye on different browsers and doing all that manual testing. Comparison.
Because it's not just like Firefox and Internet Explorer and Chrome that we have to support. We also have the previous 5 to 10, sometimes even more versions of all those browsers. And then with the JavaScript spec changing so much lately, each different browser version has new features or whatever. It's lots of fragmentation in the browser area still. It's still mostly
not quite as much as like the iOS Android space, I would say. I feel like there are tools in place that can help alleviate some of that madness, like Babel or SAS or things like that. It kind of levels the playing field to some degree.
And that's kind of one of the reasons I've stayed more on the back end, actually, is just some of these workarounds we have to deal with the browsers and different Androids and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I thought of another thing. I find it maddening sometimes to hear people, dismiss the front end as well, it's just styling, and it's not real programming. CSS isn't a real programming. It's just there's so much more to the front end. I feel, especially these days.
It's not
that you have to stay up on, or else it doesn't work. But it's this like legacy misnomer that just won't die.
Yeah, that's what the front end was in like 1999 or 1998. Now it's full applications are just implemented in JavaScript and cross-compiled to Android and iPhone, or all sorts of stuff is just happening. It's moved. Like originally, it was just short scripting, dancing monkeys and things from JavaScript, but that hasn't been the case for over a decade, really.
Oh, at least, yeah.
So what are some things that surprised you when you started working as a full-time software engineer?
Let's see. Probably the amount I had to get up to speed on. WordPress is its own beast. And then, Git was a struggle originally. Fortunately, I worked with some very smart coworkers at the time that were insistent that I did not use some kind of GUI for Git. So, I learned all of it by hand, I guess. So, what else? There was, it surprises me. I guess and this is I wish I had one of those like amazing stories like
Mm-hmm.
when I was 7 I used to code BASIC on my grandfather's computer, and it wasn't like that for me.
Yeah,
It was originally money based, and I guess the surprise about it is that they just keep throwing money at you,
yeah.
it's kind of nuts.
Yeah, that's...
and I guess that's probably because it's a very competitive field these days, and it's just getting even more competitive with the amount of people flooding the market from boot camps and things like that. But surprising, fascinating, I guess, more than anything.
Yeah, and it has gotten more mainstream or more competitive, I guess, but there's still, it's not like the prices are hitting or decreasing or anything. It's still, well, maybe there's more competition, but it hasn't really. I haven't seen like much change in the last couple of years, at least.
For the front end space, I have for sure.
Really?
I know several coworkers that have left and easily made 40% more than they were making somewhere else. So
yeah. So the
competition is more. It's a little nutty out there right now.
It's the competition is more on the employer side than on the actual engineer side.
Oh yeah, it's definitely an engineer's market right now.
Yeah, it's been a little cyclical, but yeah, this is definitely a very good time. All right, yeah, I was just a little unclear if who it was competitive for. All right, so what kind of things do you do on like an average, like what's your average day? What kind of things like kind of stand out that?
Average day is usually. Lately it's been, coming in the morning, get up to speed on email and messages, kind of getting up to speed on where I left off projects the day before.
Yeah.
Then I'll generally do some pull request reviews, leading up to whatever daily stand up I have to sit through, and then other than that, it's been training. Mostly, I've been doing a lot of platform type training. Just if anything, getting up to speed on what's out there. Not necessarily being an expert on how to do it, but be conversational with it.
Yeah, and that's another area that's just been going wild lately. Like the front end, there's tons of stuff going on, but the platform side in the last, just I guess since AWS came out, so 2008, I think, I'm not sure when Heroku came out, but there's just been an explosion in like managed services and platform stuff that you can use and just put your credit card down and you have this huge platform ready to go.
It's been another area. It's been kind of fun to watch because I remember having to FTP into things, and I worked at a company that owned their own servers and had to manage the servers and patches and security and all that manual stuff. And now it's they're refactoring things and reusing things, and it's all becoming automated, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Just finding the knowledge to make that all work can be limited, I guess. I feel like there's definitely a niche market there for people that can piece those things together.
Yeah, I've ended up doing a lot of that, just piecing the different pieces together, and just like it's crazy because just Amazon has enough searches to keep you busy, basically forever.
But they have like 60 services or something like that.
Oh, it's over 100 now. They're constantly making new ones.
Yeah, see, I'm behind.
I'm behind. Can't even keep track of them all. Yeah, so I guess we're most of the way through the questions. So I guess this one is like, what are your do you think you're going to be moving into management level, or are you going to be more of a individual contributor? Like, what kind of future do you see for yourself in programming?
I mean, I've already been in low level management
Mm-hmm.
roles before, so that's not a new thing for me.
Yeah.
My previous position, I was working as a senior developer with 2 or 3 people underneath me that I was kind of mentoring and
Yeah.
managing, I guess. And then in this role currently, I'm managing one person. So
Yeah.
I'd say I'm already there, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I'm enjoying the lead role and being able to look at all the different options and make decisions and things. I'm not sure I want to go a whole lot further than that.
Yeah.
Although in the past I remember saying I never wanted to do programming because Java in 2005 was hard.
Java in 2005.
So I guess never say never, because here's where I ended up anyway. So
yeah, yeah.
I mean, as far as upper level management, I'm pretty comfortable close to the code.
Yeah.
So I don't know where this crazy world will take me, but hopefully I'll still be programming wherever I end up.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's all our questions. So I guess, do you have any other final thoughts for us, Craig, before we wrap up?
Yes. Everybody should make a push for legislature that gets paramedics and firefighters and police the money they deserve.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're fundamental services kind of things, and it's not necessarily easy, I guess, although I haven't done it. So.
High stress.
Yeah. And you don't really think about them until you overdose on opiates that your dentist gave you, and then you're really hope they show up on time. But yeah. Anyway, to end on a positive note, thanks for talking with us, Craig.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you later. See you.